All right, everybody, welcome aboard. We just started up our airplane. This video is going to be intended just to give everybody a quick overview of kind of just taking off, just doing a little flying. Just give everybody an overview of how to fly a complex airplane, what all the knobs do, that kind of stuff. Maybe we'll follow it up as a series of just how to fly for those of you who want information only. It's not intended to be a lesson of any sort. So I did the pre-start checklist. The next thing we want to do is we do the what's called pre-taxiing. That's just to make sure your mixture as required. Your seat belts are adjusted. You always follow your checklists because you don't want to forget anything. So mixture is required. Seatbelt harness is done. Flaps are in fact up where I want them. Autopilot is off at this point in time. Heat defrost is all set the way we want it. Avionics is tested and set. It's doing what it's supposed to do. Transponder is squawking. 1200 is just a VFR. It means I'm not telling anybody.
Traffic, Archer 14902, clear of the active, taxiing back north ramp via Alpha, prior to traffic.
Sorry. Okay, so when you hear about transponders, so the part down here is called a transponder. 1200 is what everybody squawks if they're VFR. In other words, visual flight rules. I don't need to talk to anybody, but you have to put something in a box, and what you put in that box is 1200. There's a bunch of different squawk codes. If you're lost, if you're being hijacked, if you're being whatever, an emergency, you can put all those numbers in the box. The other thing you do is if you are going somewhere and you talk to, a tower somewhere like, I don't know, Huntsville, Nashville, any of your big places when you take off, if you tell them where you're going, you get what's called flight following. And what they'll tell you is, hey, squawk 5642. So you squawk 5642 so they know who you are, and where you're going. So, okay, that's a transponder. All right, so we're going to listen to the AWOS now, but the AWOS is just the local weather. So an airplane has no idea how high you are, so they give you the local barometer setting, or you could set it to the field elevation. There's actually a sign over here that says the field is 592 feet. My altimeter is saying 580, so as I change this, you can see it goes up. So I can just set it to 592. So the altimeter is probably close to 29.98, but they'll tell us on the AWOS, and they'll tell us which way the wind's going and which way everybody's going. So we're going to flip over. We have two radios, 4 stations. So the top, there's 2 comms on this one and 2 comms. Comms, you'll hear people talk about NavComm. So these radios are both NavComms. So there's 2 comm, which is communication frequencies. So that's who if I'm talking to the other airplanes, I'm talking to the tower, I'm talking to, departure, whoever you're talking to, that would be your comm, communication, and the other one is navigation. So there's a couple things out here called VORs or whatever, so you can tune in your nav which is your second 2 stations. So if I'm flying from one VOR, and the VOR is just a little bar on the ground, it tells you, hey, I'm going to it or away from it. It tells you how far off course it is. And sometimes the older style of flying, and if you're flying in the clouds, you could fly with GPS, and a lot of times what they'll do is when you're flying the flight plan, they'll say go direct to, and then you use your GPS. From one location to the other. The other thing they'll do is they'll tell you, okay, fly to, this VOR and then that VOR. So you tune in the first VOR on the top and then the second VOR. When you get to one, you pass it, you'll get out to a certain point, and that we cover all that in a video about 6 videos up because that's IFR. You'll switch from one to the other at a certain point. So this way you always know where you're going. You go from one point to the next. But we're not doing that today. But like I said, we have 2 navs on this radio, 2 navs on this, 2 comms here, 2 comms here. So in my comms, I have just 123075, which is Decatur, which is the airport I'm at. And really, we're not going to talk to anybody else. If I was going to go up and talk to Huntsville, then I would put Huntsville's frequency in here. And what you're trying to do is you want to always stay ahead of the airplane. So if you put your departure here, your takeoff here, so that would be, I'll back up for just a second. So what I have normally pre-tuned is I will have the AWOS down on my bottom radio. The AWOS is just the automated weather, which we're going to listen to in a minute here. And then what I'll do is on the other radio, when I switch over, I'll have my communication frequency for where I am. So I could just switch bunch radios up here. If I was going to fly over to Huntsville or whatever, I would have Decatur here. I would talk to them, and then I would probably have the approach for Huntsville here. Then I might have put the tower down here and then the ground over here. So this way, all you got to do is you always want to stay ahead of the airplane. All you have to do is just flip-flop your frequencies. So this little button here, that just flip-flops who you're talking to. So if you, I don't know if you guys can see the numbers change, but that's all that does. And this one flip-flops your navs. So, all right, enough about radios for now. All right, so like I said, my transponder. So now let's listen to the AWAS.
Sky condition clear. Temperature 19 Celsius. Dew point 08 Celsius. Altimeter 2996. Remarks. Density altitude 1,200.
Briarfield Regional Airport.
Automated weather observation 1728 Zulu. Wind 210 at 12. Visibility 10. Sky condition clear. Temperature 19 Celsius. Dew point.
Okay, so we got that. Like I said, it's 2996. So yeah, it's really close to where we thought it was. So we set our altimeter over here, so we're all good to go. We know now which way the wind is blowing. So that's how we get the weather. Okay. So we have the AWAS, the altimeter set, lights as required. I have my landing light on, but really no others because it's clean. The weather's beautiful, so when I'll put my landing light on, just because it keeps you much more visible as you're coming into land. I always fly with my landing light on. It's an LED bulb. It doesn't use a whole lot of energy. All right, so now pre-taxi, turn coordinator, HSI compass, we're all good. So now as we start to taxi here, this is pre-taxi. We want to watch our turn coordinator. So we want to watch this little strip here, make sure it's moving. We want to watch this little thing over here, make sure it moves. And those are just telling you that you're turning. And we just want to make sure that everything turns. In the HI, okay, so we want to get back to the HI over here. Okay, so there's my HSI. So we want to make sure that turns. We'll talk about HSI in a little bit. That's really cool. It's just an instrument that tells you which way you're going. All right, so before takeoff, we're going to get down there. Let's start where we're going. So now, the first thing I always do is do a little brake check because you want to make sure your brakes work. If they don't, you shut off here. Better than rolling down the runway and rolling down the taxiway, find out you don't have any brakes. If the brakes didn't work or whatever, just shut the engine off. Sorry again. Every time you fly, you tell people where you are, who you are, what you want to do, and you always end with where you are again. So in case somebody picks up the transmission late, because a lot of these frequencies are shared, especially for VFR, because a bunch of airports around here use the same frequencies. People that you're talking to know, hey, okay, that's Decatur, I don't need to worry about it, or hey, that was Decatur, he's taxiing to where I want to be. Sorry, let's continue. So we're going to start our taxi here, and again, we're going to tell people what we're doing. Decatur traffic, Skylane 7062, taxiing via Alpha to runway 18, Decatur. And our turn coordinates are on HSI. You can see it's all turning. This is turning. Everything's doing what it's supposed to do. All right, so you got a couple different things here. Let's go over instruments. Y'all can see this is a airspeed indicator, which is just how fast you're going. It's probably the most important instrument in the airplane, because if you exceed the speeds and you tear your wings off, that's over here. And if you go too slow, airplanes don't like to stop in midair, as everybody knows. So going too slow is a pretty bad thing as well. All right, so now that's just airspeed indicator, and you can adjust that with altitude, because as you get up in the air, it gets thinner, it won't be so accurate. We have an airspeed indicator over here as well, which isn't really reading because we're not going fast enough for the GPS one to work. Down here, this is a turn coordinator, so that just tells you if you're turning. There's a little gyro in there that keeps, and this other one, the ball is just a level. It tells you if your airplane's level or not. Use that for coordinated turns. And the top is effectively known as your artificial horizon. But this one's electronic. Hang on, I've got somebody, I don't know if you can see, there's somebody on the runway here, so I just want to make sure we don't hit somebody with a wing or hit my wing. Okay, she's turning to the side there. All right, so there's your artificial horizon, but this one will have a couple different things. Over here you have your the direction we're currently heading, the direction we're set to here on the HSI, the speedometer over here, my inches of vacuum, and my altitude is right here. So nothing's preset. Up top is for your autopilot. We're not going to cover that today. That's there. HSI is just an instrument. Like I said, if I tune it into this VOR, it'll turn. I can follow what's called a glide slope, and that'll actually bring me down to the runway and show me, right where the runway is. If there's no clouds, I just line that thing up and keep it straight, and it'll fly me right into the runway. Over here is my other altimeter, 2996, which I did not set. Okay. Just tells you how high you are. Vertical speed indicator. The name just tells you how fast you're going up or down. And these, again, are just two OBSs. Omni, variable, whatever. I don't remember what it stands for. But that is, again, you have a glide slope, and it tunes into the radio so you know whether you're going up, down, right, or left. And one for the bottom. And this one reads off of this radio, this one reads off of this radio, and your clock. And on this side, what we have is an engine analyzer. So what the engine analyzer does is tells you pretty much everything about what you're doing. It tells me what my manifold pressure is. So airplanes are a little bit, this, like I said, is complex airplane, so it doesn't, the propeller will actually twist the way it's turning. And it does that so that it always keeps the engine at a constant RPM. So the way you control your power is with your throttle. But just because you're adding more power doesn't necessarily mean that your engine will change RPM. So you got to be careful because you can over torque your engine and do damage to your engine with that. The other thing we have down here, so the three controls or four knobs we have down here is carb heat. Skylanes are horrible because the carburetor sits pretty far from the engine. It's down lower, and it can actually, as the air is coming in mixing with gas, it can get really cold, get below freezing. If there's humidity in the air, it can freeze. That's pretty cool. If you saw, there's a crop duster landing, refailure. So that's carb heat. It just takes in some heated air, feeds it through the carburetor. You're less efficient, but it'll defrost any water that's there. This is your throttle, speeds the engine up. This is your governor, your prop control, tells how fast there is. This is your mixture right here. So when we're taxiing, we leave it out because we don't need that much gas. So now we're going to go back to our check sheet. And we do our before park and brake. I'm testing them. Okay, brakes are the top of your pedal, your top of your feet right here. You push forward, and that's your brakes. And that's how you steer on the ground, and that controls your rudder with your feet. This controls your ailerons, which are the things out on the wings. I don't know if you can see them going down there, but that's your ailerons. That's how you you initiate your turns with your rudder. And then as soon as you start turning, then you turn with your ailerons. Okay. We can go over flight controls later. Okay, so park and brake set. Flight controls. Free and correct. Yeah, if they don't move, you're in trouble. And people have taken off without taking the locks off and got killed that way. Fuel selectors on both. Trim is set for takeoff. Trim decides how fast you're flying. That's what that does. And we'll talk about that later. Cowl flaps are open. That's just because we're ready to take off. Cowl flaps down there let more or less air through to cool the engine. So when you're going to take off, you're at maximum power, generating a lot of heat. You got to get the heat out of this. Like I said, is a higher horsepower engine. It's considered high performance. So you want to get that heat out of the engine. Then as you're flying and you get up to altitude and you're just cruising along, you're not generating a whole lot of heat. You want your cylinder heads to be around 350, 360 degrees. So you can just close those cowl flaps and reduce the amount of air over the engine and let it heat up a little bit. Okay, so my mixture is set for best power. My throttle to 1700 RPM. There's my throttle right here. Is my well, at this point my prop is set for full forward. You did that to start up. So we want to bring our propeller up to 1700 RPMs. This is called a run-up. It doesn't have to be exactly 17, but that's good enough. Now we check our right mag, left mag. You have two magnetos, and they're both working. And we want to check our carb heat. You can hear the engine, as you give it more warm air, you can hear the engine go a little slower, and you can see it going slower. Now we want to cycle our prop. And you can hear it going slower. You can watch the RPMs drop. And what you're doing there is you're just getting that, hang on a second. Okay, so now we're checking our oil pressure, oil temperature, We have plenty of gas, our carb temperature. We're just checking all our gauges to make sure everything is as it's supposed to be before we bring it back down to idle. So going back to the magnetos, you have two ignition systems, complete ignition systems in an airplane. So in case you lose one, you have another, you can still run. Redundancy is a real good thing in airplanes. So again, you check your right, your left, and they're both working, doing what they're supposed to do. Because you can tell by the drop in the RPMs. Okay, so now let's get back. Here we are, prop. Okay, so now go back. Mixture best power throttle, 1700. Mags we tested and prop we cycled. Again, you want to get that cold oil that was sitting in that hub up there out, so you have nice warm oil. It'll respond as you want it to respond. Carb heat, we tested that, saw the engine come down. Instruments, because that's why we looked all over. Suction gauge, before when these were, so you have, this is electric. These are now electric, have their own backup batteries, so there are no vacuum instruments in this airplane. There used to be vacuum instruments. The gyro used to be vacuum. For redundancy, it had one electric and one vacuum. Now they're, because this has a battery and they're backed up, you don't have vacuum pumps, and vacuum pumps are kind of finicky animals. I'm glad to be rid of it, but because I don't have that, I don't have to worry about my suction gauge anymore. That's gone. All right, so now my idles, I'm idling. Friction lock is where it's supposed to be. Doors and windows closed and latched. Everything's good. Strobe lights, landings, transponder, squawking altitude. We are. Time, record, brakes, release, abort, pan ready. So we are ready to go. Again, who you are, where you are, what you want to do. And we're listening for other people at this point in time. I want to make sure this airspeed goes live too. If not, we're going to end this video pretty quick. Decatur traffic, Skylane 7062, departing runway 18, Decatur. Again, who you are, or where you are, who you are, what you're going to do, and where you are. So now we are heading toward the runway. And we're full rich, where we want to be. Straight down the runway. Start giving her a little gas and hold that center line. And there's my speedometers, are both live. Holding the center line. We get to about 75 RPM. All right, now we want to get to rotating speed. We just rotate. Make sure we have a positive rate of climb. And you'll have to put some rudder in because there's a thing called the P factor. And we make sure we're climbing out at 100. We can take some of that down. And as soon as we get to about 500 feet above, we start pulling this back because you don't want to be at full power for too long. So now we'll pull our throttle back to about 23.5 inches. Okay, so we're at 22 is fine. And then we'll get the prop on the governor. So we'll start pulling the propeller back. You can hear it slowing down. And now we're 24, 30, 22, so we're good. All right, those are the first two things. And we'll slow this down a little bit more as we go. We'll get this down to, just got to make sure we're watching where we're going. We don't want to get above 1,500 feet because we'll be in Huntsville airspace. Now, again, we want to tell people what we're going to do. Decatur traffic, Skylane 7062, turning downwind for runway 18, Decatur. Okay, so if we get above 2,000 feet here, we'll be in Huntsville's airspace because it's right over there. So we stay here. And 1,300 feet is pattern altitude out here anyway. So if we want to stay at about 1,300 feet, right there. And now we're going to pull this throttle back to 22, and we're going to pull the prop back to 22 as well. That's a good place to cruise. So you always, when you're pulling your prop back, you always want to pull your power back first. Otherwise, you can over-torque the engine if you pull the prop back and have your throttle wide open. And you can see my manifold pressure changing. So you don't ever want to be what's called over square. And down here, what we're doing is trimming because as we're going faster, the plane wants to fly. So we're actually speeding up. We're pulling our trim wheel back so we can speed up. The weather's kind of ugly. And we're going to drop this down. Since we're just playing around out here, we're going to drop down to about 20. 2220 is just a good place to just play around. Decatur traffic, Skylane 7062. We're going to turning base, exiting the pattern to the west, Decatur. So again, I just told you guy down on the Runup, you can see him this way. He knows what I'm doing. He's not waiting for me. I'm out of his way. And everything is good. All right, so now we want to get this all straightened out. And we fly him. Okay, and again, we want to stay, once we get out, I don't know if you guys can see the river out here. Once we get out over the river, we're out of Decatur's airspace, Huntsville's airspace. So their airspace looks kind of like a wedding cake. Just has the bottom layer. If you get closer to Huntsville, then they actually control the airspace all the way down to the ground. And as you get further away, out of that one airspace, then what starts happening is the camera moved. So then it comes out, so it goes up to 2,000 feet. So this way you can take off and fly around. You get underneath their airspace. If I'm under their airspace, I don't have to talk to them or anything. Talking to them is not a problem. You can just say, hey, here I am, this is me, and you tell them what you're doing. So, okay, now we're up and flying, and as soon as we get out here, we're going to get up to about 3,000 feet, and we'll just go over autopilot operation, which is kind of cool. So we're going to lean this out just a little bit here, because airplanes, they don't know how high you're going. They don't know what temperature is. They don't have a choke like old cars used to. They don't do too much anything. We don't want to get too lean because we're going to climb a little bit. We want to keep it richer. So basically what you're doing, over here is telling your exhaust gas temperature. So we talked about cylinder head temperature, but we didn't talk about exhaust gas temperature. And exhaust gas temperature tells me how lean I'm running or how much gas I'm putting in to my engine. So I want that to be about really what you're supposed to do. When you get up to cruising, you lean it out until you hit what's called peak, and that's your peak efficiency. But you don't want to run at peak efficiency, and you can do two things. You can run rich at peak or lean at peak. This is an older airplane. We don't run. Sorry, I don't run lean at peak in an older airplane because your carburetor isn't and your fuel system isn't good enough to distribute the fuel all over. If we get up to like 7,000 feet, there's a bunch of argument on whether that's good or not. But above 7,000 feet or so, your engine, because the air is so thin, you're not creating enough power to really cause a problem. If you're lower than that, you can actually run one cylinder so lean or another one at peak. And what happens there is you could be burning up exhaust valves. So again, we're climbing up here. It's not the prettiest of days. It was prettier this morning, but we just wanted to do some flying. So I just leaned it out a little bit because I didn't want to be put 15 gallons of gas in Fallon spark plugs. And you can see how my carb temperature is already -1 degrees, so it's cold. So what I tend to do is every once in a while I'll pull it and I'll pull the carb heat and give a little bit of heat. But what you can do is you just really kind of can watch your manifold pressure. You start icing over, your manifold pressure should change a little bit. And again, I'm not certain of that, but I think that's pretty accurate. Again, you'll notice you start losing some performance, then you give it, first thing you do is sometimes you're going to pull that carb heat in. Alright, so what we're going to do here, I don't know if you can see this, you can't see the bug on here, but the first thing I'm doing is, because I'm heading in this direction, I will hit my heading track, and that will automatically center my heading bug to where I want to be. Over here is my altitude selector. I'm going to go set this up to 2,500 just because I'm just playing around. So now we're currently climbing at about 400 feet per minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my autopilot. So what we're doing is turning on my flight director. So now it's not controlling anything with, hang on, let me fix this. Okay, my other camera is going crazy, so we're going to have to set that up where it needs to be. So what we're going to do now, the flight director's on, and my heading bud is set. So once I turn my autopilot on, what'll happen is it'll do exactly what I'll tell it. I'll turn it on and set it to heading down here. So it'll fly whatever heading I preset there, and it'll fly up to that at whatever I'm climbing at. When I turn.
97 at 2,000 feet departing area 2.
Okay, whatever I turn it on to, it will go up to 2,500 at that heading and stop there. So it'll keep climbing. So what I'm doing is turning my autopilot on. I'm putting it on heading mode. So what we're going to do now is, since we're flying a heading, we're going to turn this knob will just change the heading we're flying at. And you see the plane's banking, doing what it's supposed to do. So VNAV, there's two ways to fly. You can fly for vertical speed. Okay, vertical speed is how fast you're going up and down, like we talked about. Or you can fly, or you can climb via vertical speed or indicated airspeed. So vertical speed's not the safest way because it sets your airplane up to climb at 400 feet per minute or whatever you pre-select. But the problem with that is, or we're going to head due north here, is if your airplane can't maintain speed, it doesn't know. It'll just keep flying. This autopilot's a little smarter. It will keep flying at that speed, at that vertical speed, trying to maintain 400 feet a minute or whatever the case may be, and it may slow you down. People got killed because they had, ice building on their wings. They couldn't maintain that vertical speed. The airplane kept trying to pitch up and up and up. Ran out of speed and it stalls. Okay, so stall, when they talk about, stall, that's a wing stall. That's the point where your wings stop generating lift. All right, so we stood our heading up. We were at, okay.
Decatur traffic, Meridian 520 Hotel Papa is 4 to the northwest, inbound landing 18 Decatur.
4 to the northwest. Okay, so he's okay, but he's close to us. We're further. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our flight. So I'm listening. He said Decatur. He's 4 to the northwest, so that puts him out here. But he's 4 miles. We're pretty much due west of the airport. So now we're going to go back to our flight plan. We have Decatur. We're going to go back up. Clear. Clear. Okay, so we're going to scroll up. What we're going to do is we're going to hit procedures. Select approach. Okay, so now we're going to go the RNAV 18. We're going to enter that. Now there's a procedure out here, and we're actually going to start this at Intevi, which is the initial approach. And we're just going to go ahead and activate that. So load is enter. Okay, so now my airplane, I'm going to go down here and hit nav. And I'm going to turn my altitude back down to 2,000. Okay, now 2,000 is too low to really fly this approach, but the airplane's pretty much flying itself at this point. So again, I want to stay under 2,000 when I'm flying out here. Intevi is outside of their airspace.
Decatur traffic, Meridian 520 Hotel Papa is 3 mile final for 18 Decatur.
All right. So we're Intevi. Is just a point in space. It's a GPS coordinate somewhere out in space, and we're going to lean this out just a little bit more. Okay, Intevi's, like I said, just a point out in space. So what's going to go out is we'll fly out to Intevi. Once we get to Intevi, we're going to fly a hold because we're not pointing toward the airport. So what'll happen is we'll get out to Intevi and we'll do this thing that looks like a racetrack. It'll come back around. And then we'll start on the inbound. So it'll go Intevi, do the hold, Atoyo, just another point space, Zavid, and the reason, you have to pronounce these names, it's very Z-A-D-V-I, Zavidi, Atoyo, and what those things are is those are just points. So when you're flying this approach, if you pull it up on a plate, you know by the time I hit Atoyo, I'm supposed to be...
Meridian 520, Hotel Papa, 1 mile final, 18 Decatur.
So when I get out to Atoyo, I'm supposed to be at 1,300 feet. I'm supposed to be at 800 when it hits Intevi. And those are just fixes so I know to go down. So in case it was cloud out here, more cloudy than it is, and I couldn't see, I would know how to get down. So that's what we're doing. So, all right, so now we're going to go back, and we're going to, so this is my flight plan. It's all entered. We'll exit flight plan, and I'll come out here and I'll see that I've got 8.6 miles to Intevi. So it's kind of weird if you're talking to people on the ground, you know, on the radio, like you announce where you are to people. We're 8 miles from Tevi. You know, you want everybody to know where you are, but if I tell everybody, hey, I'm going to Tevi to fly to Holt, this, that, or the other, if you're a VFR pilot, you really don't know what a Tevi is. So when I get to Tevi, I'll say, hey, you know, this is Skylane 7062, and we're 10 miles out. This is what we want to do. And they understand 10 miles from north. Again, you know, I don't really want to lean it out too much. We are at 2,000 feet holding there, no problem. You see it's blue up top, so that means I captured that altitude. We're going 126 miles per hour across the ground. Again, we go a whole lot faster, but there's no need because we're just playing. I can speed my prop up a little bit more, get it into the green arc. And my cylinder head's 312, so they're kind of cold. We're Fallon spark plug, but who cares? It's not, I mean, like I said, we're not going that far that we have to really worry about a whole lot. I could close them down now and heat them up a little bit, but you need to be cognizant if you do have to go around. So we're just cruising around here pretty close to the ground because we're not going anywhere. And here, now if you look, you can see, okay, now that little beep just told us that we're approaching that 2,000 feet. So you can see the little racetrack coming in here at Tevi. We're 3 miles away from the Tevi. Okay, generally I don't like flying around so low. I mean, we've got a lot of fields out here, so it's okay. One of the things that you want is altitude in an airplane is insurance. The higher you are, the easier it is to find a place, a safe place to land. So if you're flying around 1,000 feet above the ground, you can't glide for real very far. But again, we have highways, we have a lot of fields out here. So if something happens, you say, okay, I'm in this field. But if you're in a more populated area, you absolutely want to make sure you have some altitude. Okay, so there's a couple modes here. I would already switch to the, so we're in nav, which means we're flying off the GPS. And then once we start inbound, we'll switch her over to the approach mode. So the approach mode, you see it's saying hold parallel. So it's going to fly me out and then make a better turn at the thing and get me lined up with the runway. The other thing I can do here is we're set up to 110.55. So independent of that, let's put that in down here too. So if I put 110.55 down here on the bottom and flip it over, you'll see this one just changed. And what will happen is these arrows, you can see right now I'm low because I'm underneath this one, so I'm below the glide slope. It's like a glide slope coming off the field, so I'm actually low. And right now we are lined up with the runway, but it's behind us. So when this is lined up right here, that means I'm in line with the runway. So now we'll fly out 4 miles. So holds are set up, or the approaches are set up, so it doesn't really matter how big your airplane is, you always fly the same approach. So whether I'm a 747, I'd fly 4 miles out, or whether I'm this, I'll fly 4 miles out. It takes me longer.
left downwind 18.
So you can tell that the Autopilot's going nice. I could hand fly all this, but I'm not. I don't have to fly at all, really. All right, so one of the things we got to remember to do is as you start slowing down and you get underneath that green arc, you always pull your carb heat in just to make sure everything's clear. You want to pull some carb heat on. Again, the Autopilot is pretty amazing. You always babysit it, so you notice we're at 2,000 feet, where we want to be, and we are dead in a line here. We are on the runway where we want to be. But what we're going to do here is we're going to go vertical speed. Let's set this first. We're going to go to 1900. Vertical speed. Minus 100, because we want to go down a little bit. to 1900 because I want to get under 2,000 feet because I don't want to get it. I don't want to violate the airspace. So now my GPS is telling me in case I was hand flying, saying turn left.
5 miles off your left
Now,
wing. Are you guys
turn
ready
left
for
to
the
140.
Runway 18 at Murphy Brim.
We are. We're on about a 6 mile 45 right now.
That's clear to 60, final 18, full stop that track.
And again, we're declining at 100 feet per minute because again, we don't want to get too low here. We just keep looking around for airplanes to make sure we're all clear, especially when you're turning and you're in the hole.
Takeoff 340, so clear, west downwind 18, Murphy.
All right, let's tell Decatur what we're doing now at this point. Decatur traffic, Skylane 7062. We're approximately 10 miles out. We're going to be straight in for runway 18, Decatur. All right, that should be good.